Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another We Can workshop. My name is Carrie Ramsey, and I'm the project manager for the We Can project, which is led by Queen's University. And it's wonderful to have you joining us here today for what is a great workshop on a topic that has come up increasingly, I find, across the board with our businesses, particularly those who are in their growth stage. And so today we're going to, of course, be talking about protecting your brand. We've got two crackerjack leaders who will be speaking to us. Tomi, who some of you may have met already, Angela, also both from Queen's University. So as we're getting started here today, I would love for you to introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat. Let us know what's your business. Where are you connecting from? Go ahead, take this moment to network in the chat. Great chance to do a little visibility building right from the comfort of your own home. So it's wonderful to have you with us. As you're taking a moment to introduce yourselves in the Zoom chat, I will acknowledge that Queen's University is situated on the ancestral territory of the Huron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. And of course, right now we are in International Women's Month. And so I thought I would take a moment to highlight an Indigenous woman who has been an integral part of Canadian history, but also has a tie to the Kingston region. And so I'll let you guess a little bit who I'm going to talk about by first saying that you've probably heard of Brantford. You've probably heard of the Joseph Brant Hospital, the Joseph Brant Museum, and many other buildings and sites that are named for Joseph Brant, who, of course, was a Mohawk military and political leader who was instrumental during the American Revolution. But not many people have heard of his sister, Molly Brant. And she too was a powerful Mohawk political leader who lived during the 1700s, and for a time she lived in the Kingston region as well. So she herself played an important role in maintaining relations between the British and the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy. And as the sister of Joseph Brant, she used her influence and diplomacy to support the British during the American Revolutionary War. And she helped guide many Haudenosaunee families to safety and new settlements in what is now known as an Ontario. So today we celebrate Molly Brant and all the other unsung Indigenous women who have shaped our amazing country. So let's make the shift now to passing the virtual microphone to Angela and to Tomi. Over to you, fabulous folks, to guide us through this topic today of protecting your brand. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Carrie. So we're going to be talking about branding. We have a couple of topics we'd like to get through, and then we can open the floor to questions. So if you have questions during the talk, maybe you can just jot them down and hold for the first about 15 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor. I'm Angela Lyon. I'm a patent agent at Queen's University, which means most of my life is working with inventors who have new technology to protect how it functions. And I also give advice to We Can on all different topics about intellectual property. My specialization is patenting, and I'm really pleased that we have Tomi with us today. I'll let you introduce yourself, Tomi, but I'm really happy you were able to join us and give the legal perspective.
Thanks, Ange. Hi, everyone. My name is Tomilola Adebiyi, and I'm really happy to be here today to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is branding, trademarks, basically. I am the director of the Queen's Business Law Clinic, and in my role, I help support small businesses, charities, and not-for-profits within the Kingston and surrounding areas with, legal questions that they might have on various topics. And trademarks just happens to be one of my favorites. So here we are today. I'm hoping that we're able to learn a lot as we go ahead with the presentation. And I think I'm supposed to do disclaimers. So as we said, we're talking about protecting your brand, not just legally, but strategically. And as you know, our goal today is not to turn you into IP lawyers. It's really just to help you know what questions to ask and when to seek help. This session is educational. It does not replace legal advice tailored to your specific business. As you'll find, IP is very fact specific and small details matter. And so we ask that you please use this session to identify gaps in your brand protection strategy and then seek professional help as needed. And I'm going to hand over to Ange.
Okay, I'm going to just give a really brief overview of what types of protection are available in Canada. The first one is design, which means the shape of something. Let's imagine you were an artist and you came up with a new shape for a vase that could be industrially reproduced, and you wanted to protect that exact cool new shape. This is the type of thing. Um, there's pros and cons to designs, and we'll talk a bit more about them in a few minutes. But yeah, I want you, when you hear design, I want you to think the shape of something like that Coca-Cola bottle that we can all imagine. The next one is utility patents. This is where I work. How does the thing function? No matter what shape it is, if it does this function, I want to own the idea. And so there's a bit broader protection than the design. And we'll talk a bit about patents today, but not much. I don't really want to get into the weeds on utility patents, but we're available if you have an invention and you want a one-on-one session for advice. The next one is copyright. This is the type of thing that you would see maybe at the bottom of your company's website, a C with a circle around it and your company name and the year. If you look at any website, like for example, if you go to a Queen's University one, you go down to the footer, you're going to see this copyright Queen's University 2025 or whenever it was launched. It's a way of protecting text and images, particularly if you're teaching something on your website and it's your original expression. You want to say, this is my work. You can't lift it and pretend it's your own. And the last one, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on trademarks. This is a way of owning a small number of words or a symbol. You're going to see the Nike swoosh when we talk about this. And the Nike swoosh is interesting. It's not a name of a product. It's not a name of a company, but it helps tie all of their work product together so that you get that customer loyalty. And so you can imagine how important it is for them to own that in their field of business. Okay, I'm going to start with a bit of a story about one of the WeCan clients. This is Karen Brunet. And she has developed a device to wear intravaginally to help with urinary incontinence. For example, we all know it's a nightmare to get on the trampoline with the kids because even if you've got great bladder protection, you often get leakage with that high intensity impact stuff. And so you're going to see this Control Plus company coming in on your phone. They are launching now. And I wanted to just briefly introduce all the different ways that Karen could pursue intellectual property protection. Right here, you'll see the name Control Plus, the color of it, the way it looks, the fact that the C is capitalized, the plus is black. I mean, that is very distinctive, and she will have that on her products, and she will have gone for trademark protection. She also went for trademark protection for a tagline, live life freely. Not a company name, not a product name, but brand identity. And we protected the shape of the device through design patents and the function of it through utility patents. On her website, she may have copyright for her presentation of how to use the device and all the language on its use and function. Or she might have a little flyer inside the package when you buy, and that could be copyrighted. And this is a picture of her office. She told me she's running out of frames and she's resorted to just putting pieces of paper on the wall. She's very happy to show the design patents and the utility patents and the copyright. She's got them in more than one country, and she's really developed some intellectual property that has helped her to attract investment. And it will help now that she's launched with customer loyalty and brand recognition. And that's what we're talking about today. Okay, what's next? Why bother with this stuff? We've got some of the brands listed here, like the Apple and Coca-Cola in that particular script, in that particular color, Google, Kentucky Fried Chicken. All of these things really impact you. You may not even really see them as branding, but when you walk into Best Buy and you're feeling a little bit lost, and then you're like, oh, there's the Apple. Like you almost feel like that's home. That's what I want. So yeah, it's the feeling that you're giving customers that is one of the reasons that we're talking about branding today. And so it would be interesting after this talk if you just kind of recognize that customer loyalty. Oh, whatever your dish soap is, that's the one I want. I like that one. You get that it's almost feeling of home about it. Why bother with this stuff? It's that customer recognition. It's keeping your competitors out of your space by already having a product name that's known and that people want. So there's a barrier to entry. We'll talk about these things that are in brackets here, the trade secrets and what all these things are. But I just wanted to introduce why bother, and it's really to develop your company's lifestyle and atmosphere so that your customers are attracted to keep coming back. Tomi, I think you're on this one.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about naming a company or product. And as we all know, the first thing when you get excited about a business name is jumping on Google to check if anybody is using that name right now. While that is good, that's not everything that you should be doing. And there are some questions that you should ask yourself before you choose a name for your business or your product. One question you should ask is whether that domain name is available. And what is a domain name? A domain name is your website address on the internet. So think of it like this. Your house has a street address and your website has a domain name. So without your domain name, your customers would not know how to find your website. So it's very important that before you choose a name for your business or for your products, you are able to register that same name for your domain name if that's the plan. And how can you check whether your domain name is available? There are some easy ways to do so. You can check availability through a domain registrar website such as GoDaddy or Squarespace. Or if you want a .ca domain, you can go through the Canadian Internet Registration Authority on their website. They have a easy way you can search for a domain name's availability. Now, the next question you want to ask yourself is whether the term has been trademarked already. Now, the easiest way to find this out is by conducting a search on the relevant trademarks databases, which Andrew will touch on shortly. And that would give you a picture of whether or not it's registered and where it's registered in Canada, US, or wherever. Then the next thing you want to check is to do a nuance search. A nuance search is a name check that you're required to do prior to incorporating a company in Canada. A fun fact about that initial is it actually stands for newly upgraded automated name search. So it's really just, the name is exactly what it does. So it searches across Canada, looking at existing corporations and business names, comparing them to your proposed names, and then at the end of the search, you get a search report that shows you what the similar names are and whether there are any identical names or anything that you should be worried about. So that helps to narrow down whether the name is a good one or not. And then, very important, especially nowadays where e-commerce is like everywhere, it's important that you also conduct social media searches. Check Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Google to see if the proposed name is already in use in the same industry. And my emphasis is on the same industry because similar trademarks could coexist on the trademarks register if they are not related to the same goods or services, or if they are not serving the same clients. So for instance, you may have seen Popeye's Chicken in town. There's also Popeye's Supplement Store. They both exist on the same trademarks register because even though they are similar trade names, they have different logos, they serve different industries, they serve different clients, and so the likelihood of confusion for a customer is quite low. Before we move on from this slide, I just wanted to also add, while we are on this topic, that you should keep in mind some of the factors that the law would consider when determining if two trademarks are confusingly similar. So one of the factors include the degree of resemblance between the trademarks in the appearance, in the sound, or in the ideas suggested by them, or the nature of the goods or services that is going to be associated with those trademarks. They also look at the channels of trade through which the goods or services are going to be sold, and how you intend to use the trademark or the degree of use of the trademarks in the marketplace. As a small business owner looking to choose a name for your business or your products or your services, you need to ask yourself, is my proposed mark so similar to any existing mark in the marketplace or industry that I'm looking to enter into that an ordinary customer who sees this mark, who sees my mark and the existing mark side by side, can think that our products or services are related to one another? If your answer is yes, then you need to make your name or your mark more distinctive, because that means there's the possibility of confusion. Then lastly, I just wanted to add that the fact that you have been able to successfully incorporate your business with a name that you have chosen does not automatically mean that your trademark application will be successful. And I know that sounds a bit confusing to people when you first tell them that, but the test that applies in both um, under both legislation is very different. And so it's important to also bear that in mind when choosing a name. And I'm going to hand over to Ange. She takes us through the next slide.
Fantastic. I'm not going to spend a long time on this one. I just want you to try to look at the big picture of all the customer touch points for your company. I don't want you to associate your brand with just your logo. Let's say you had, your fabulous artist neighbor draw a little koala in a tree, and that's your branding. It's going to be everything that the customer experiences. It might be on your website. It might be how your staff are handling customers, complaints, etc. The whole customer experience, that's the branding. And so here's a couple of brands, and I just want you to see what you feel. I mean, UPS has actually trademarked that color brown in the field of business that they're in, so that you don't have other people driving into your driveway delivering packages also with brown trucks and brown uniforms. Yeah, it's really interesting how you can basically give a feeling and an experience, and you can carve it out and own it in your field of business. It can be a scent, it can be a color, like this. Is it Tiffany's, the jewelry box that I'm showing on the right-hand side? They own that color, right? Like worldwide, they have trademarked it because of the joy that you experience when you're handed that color box. And A&W also, just as an example of some of the branding that you see every day. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is, okay, let's imagine you're having movie night with the family. You're in the kitchen, like doing the last dishes, and you hear that Netflix ta-dum. Like the movie night is starting, and it gives you an actual feeling of like, oh, that sound is something that they would trademark and own for their field of entertainment. Also, the World Wildlife Federation would have the koala bear. They're trying to give a feeling to their customer of how they're helping almost extinct species, or this world one where people are actually helping the globe. So yeah, that's the type of branding that we want you to back up and see the big picture of what's going on with your company. And here's a few more that would have trademarks on this for every product. Like the Starbucks, it's not specific to the coffee cup. It's all over the store. It's, the sign outside the building. Nike swoosh, same thing. Broad all over their products so that you can get good customer recognition. And I want you to start noticing the little TM or the little R with the circle around it. We're going to talk about which one's which and which one you should use in a couple of minutes. But when you see these things, I want you to be awake to the intellectual property protection that's behind them. Okay, Tomi, do you want to do this exercise with them?
Sure, I can do it. So we wanted you to think of one word that you would want your customers to associate with your business, and also think of one word that you think your customers currently associate with your business, and see if, what you would want and where you think you're at, basically. And if you're willing to share, you can just type it in the chat or on mute and share with us. Okay, flexible community. Okay. Knowledge. Okay.
Can I just unmute and chat a little bit?
Yeah.
So I just finished a book and it's called A Black Skin Bold Heart. And I'm building a framework around the word bold. So bold stands for, something. So that's what I'd like to people to know about me and my business, about the bold part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. So whenever you're falling in love with a term and starting to build, the
Mm-hmm.
first warning is let's look it up and see if anyone else owns that thing, because they could actually be in a blocking position to you. So in a couple of minutes, when I go on the trademark database, I'm happy to type in bold as the example search, and we'll see what comes up. You want to know in your field of business, which is a category that is a number, we can figure out which number you're in. Let's say you're in category number 4. You want to see what's going on with the word bold in that category in Canada, or maybe broader than Canada, maybe broader than that category 4. Maybe it's educational and I don't know, self-help, like it's got more than one category. So yeah, first step, can you actually use this term?
Yeah.
Then do you want to think about protecting that term and actually owning it yourself?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to read out a few of the
Great.
things that we received. We have flexible, community, knowledge, heroic, cycling side, knowledge, cafe, relaxing. We have accessibility, we have empowerment, and we have bold. Now, these are all words that you want to be associated with your business. And so I guess the next step, integrity as well. The next step would be how can you create a brand that actually reflects this? Like Anja said, not just with the name alone, but with the overall feel, what people feel when they come into your business, what they feel when they talk to your customer service, everything. So that's the whole picture that comes with branding as a whole, and that's what we are looking at today. And so I'm just going to, I think I am
Yep.
going ahead to hand over to Ange and
Yep.
to take us through the next slide.
So this slide is just to give you a little bit of warning that we want you to be consistent. Once you've chosen what your brand's going to be, you need to get buy-in from your staff. There's a particular, I don't know, letterhead, font, the way the package looks when it's going out the door. There's a whole bunch of things, and you need your staff to be quite rigid in its implementation. You want to be clear about how they can, where they locate the logo, where these things are located for them so that it's easy for them. And you might even want to have like a 1 or 2 page brief bullet point, do this, do this, do this. This is how we put the package in the mail. It has to have this and it has to have the bow or whatever. Yeah, so you want to take charge of the brand after you've made the decisions about what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You don't want to confuse customers. Sometimes it looks one way, other times it doesn't. And you may even be trademarking something that has to do with your brand. And eventually you may have to prove to the authorities that you are using that. And then if you look back, if you've been hit and miss on whether you were using it, that could be a problem. So yeah, I've mentioned this. Oops, let's go back. One brand folder so that your staff can find it easily. It's always in the same place. They know where to go and get that stuff, and have it clearly labeled. Okay, we're going to talk about when to use TM and when to use R with a circle around it. Tommy, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, so I can jump in and start, and please feel free to add in as we go. And so, as we've already talked about, before you use a trademark, you need to conduct all these searches to determine whether it's available or not. And we'll be looking into the global brand database as we go along. But one thing to note is that the TMR marks are used. The TM is used when when you're using a trademark that you haven't completed the registration process. So it's for every trademark, you can use the TM mark, but you cannot use the R unless you actually have a registration for your trademark. You have a certificate, you've completed the entire process. So that's really the main difference between the two. And so when you go and you see a mark that has the R, you know for sure that that has a registration attached to it. With the TM, probably they are still in the process of getting it, but they have identified this to be their trademark in correspondence. Yeah. And so
Tommy,
the
can I
nice thing,
just can
sure.
can I just slide in there with a clarification question? So to use the TM though, you must have already started and submitted, correct? Correct? The TM process, or is it just something like one day I want to trademark this, so now I'm going to add the TM, just to clarify as to
My
when you can
understanding that
do
you're allowed to use TM before you start. If you consider it a proprietary thing, you can put TM and it's not promising that you're starting a trademark process. You can just believe that you will in a couple of years when you have some money.
Yes, and that's absolutely correct because there are common law rights attached to trademarks. So if you have a trademark and you know this is the mark associated with my business, even without registration, it's deemed to be your trademark. The only issue is when someone beats you to it, for instance, and registers before you, then that becomes a problem. But without that happening, it is a trademark that is associated with your product, and you can use the TM logo just to identify it as a trademark.
Yeah. And so if one of the things we want to warn you about is not using the R with a circle around it in a fraudulent way. Don't say it unless you're actually through all the hoops and it's been allowed and issued and it is a registered mark. So you're not just thinking about applying or actually in the process of applying, you've actually finished the whole thing and you have a registered mark. That's when you can use R. But you're allowed to use TM right now without any paperwork or money to the government or it's just saying, I believe this mark is proprietary to my company. You know, I'm trying to develop this brand with this word bold. I would like you to search first, and we're going to do that right now, learning how to search to see if you're treading on somebody else's property. Okay, let's do it. I'm going to unshare this and go to the web and just start from Google so that you can all learn how to do this.
as you're doing that, Ange, Martha pointed out that the Nike trademark has a TM but not an R. Why would it
Yeah.
not say R? Why would it not say registered?
Maybe they don't want to imply that it's registered all over the world. They're probably dealing on a world stage. And it's possible that some of I mean, they've been around for so long, it's almost hard to believe that not everything is through the hoops and registered. Maybe they don't want to update. It's the cost of updating everything to have the R circle around it might be daunting for them. I don't really know the answer. But
Yeah.
I expect that if we look up Nike stuff, we're going to find it registered in a lot of countries all over the world.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also jump in that sometimes they might already have, it might be a cost thing. They've already created this logo with the TM, and they're like, well, we know we've registered the mark already. We don't need to go update it and have an R. So we'll just keep using this. It does, so for basically what we are saying is you can use the TM with a trademark that has not been registered. You can still use the TM with a trademark that has been registered. It doesn't really, mean anything to you in that situation. But you cannot use the R unless that trademark has been registered. It has to have been registered for you to be able to use it. So I guess that would be a way to clarify.
Okay, I'm starting from Google. I want you to learn how to do this. We're not going to go and do individual searches for everybody on the call, so let's just learn how to do it. Go into Google, type Global Brand Database, and it comes up first with the World Intellectual Property Office. That is the one I want. So I'm clicking on that. And we're going to see how slow my web is now. Okay, I'm hitting the big blue button to go ahead and go into this database that talks to the national databases in 150 different countries. So we're not just looking at trademarks that are international, we're looking at the Canadian ones and the US ones and China, et cetera, through this launch pad. Okay, I'm going to put in the word bold. And I'm going to say go. I got to get rid of you
Does it
guys.
matter if it's capital B dot?
Nope.
No. Okay, cool.
No, it doesn't matter. Okay,
Okay.
so this is interesting. We could, like, if I was on with you, Eileen, and I would go in and say, what class number are you? Which is called Nice class. It's named after Nice, France, where the agreement was signed. So anyway, let's imagine you're in Nice class, I don't know, 14. And so you would walk through all these hits with the word bold, looking for your field of business. Now, it's kind of annoying when you get, all these countries that aren't that relevant to you. So I want to teach you how to go over to this filter and go into the country. And I want Canada. So I'm going to find Canada on the list and put the little check mark. And then once I do the check mark, it takes a minute to rejig the search results and present them again. Okay, so now we're looking at what's going on with trademarks in Canada for the word bold. And you can see this green circle. This is a registered one. They are paying. It is up to date. They have legal teeth to go after you. And so if your field of business overlaps theirs, 36 and 37, then you want to do some research to figure out what they're doing because you may not be able to do this. So I expect we all want to know what Nice class she is so that we can go through and see what's actually blocking her. But I don't know if I want to spend the time on that. Eileen, if you want to stay at the end, we can play a bit. But one of the things I wanted to point out is over on
Thank
the
you.
right is what their trademark logo looks like. If you're close but not quite overlapping their word, you really don't want to have the logo also overlap. I mean, you don't want your customers to be becoming confused about whether it's your company or the other one. So
Right.
yeah, you want to see what's going on. Like, what is this thing? I don't know if it's like a coat of arms or what, but anyway, you want to be aware of what's going on with your word particularly in your country, but for Canadian sales, you probably want to know what's going on in the States too, and not just
Mm-hmm.
looking with that filter of Canada only. I
Mm-hmm.
usually put the filter as let's go Canada and US. This is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It's got, I don't know if it's some kind of whirlpool symbol or something. Anyway, okay, I don't want to stay a long time here.
Appreciate that.
I do want everyone to know
Thank you.
we can figure out your niece class. Basically, I can just go to Google and say what niece class is, and then put a word in education or, self-help or whatever, water purification, whatever. What niece class is blah, blah, blah. And it'll say, oh, it's niece class number 4 or whatever. And then you do this global brand database and focus on the ones that are that category. Okay, I know that took a minute, but I think it's important to learn that. Okay, we did that. And I'm happy to do it in individual appointments with you so that we can see what's going on with your mark. Oh,
Good news, if you are a Wecan client, you get free access to Ange and the QBLC. So they're going to give you contact information at the end, but if you don't grab it, reach out to me. You have my email. I'll set you up with them, okay?
so this global brand database, just to say it again, this is checking to see if you're stepping on to somebody else's property. And in fact, you could end up owing them money because you launched with their word. Let's imagine it's the word Xerox. You didn't know it was owned, and you started selling stuff saying Xerox all over it. And they come knocking on the door, and you could potentially owe them money because you used a word that they own in this country. Okay, let's keep going. I think we did that.
Yeah.
Oh
So
no, tell me you want to talk about common mistakes.
yeah, and you've led us nicely into one of the common mistakes, and so I'll just build up on that. One of the common mistakes that small businesses make when using trademarks is not searching properly or not searching at all. So usually you pick a name that you love for your business. Sometimes you conduct a nuanced search. Sometimes you don't even know to do that. You just put it in Google, and then you spend all this time and effort building a brand. You've launched. I used an example here of Giggles premium, so you want to do spices and you have those Giggles premium spices that you really love. You love the name, it's so nice. And so before you launched, you conducted an Ontario bias nuance search because you wanted to incorporate in Ontario. And so you go ahead and incorporate, you spend so much money on your branding, your packaging, lovely website design, and you think your business is finally, off to a great start. And then 6 months later, to support what Ange just mentioned, you get a cease and desist letter from a company called Giggle Spices Limited, which is a federally incorporated company in Canada that has already registered the trademarks Giggle Spices. And now, somehow, you missed checking the global brand database. You didn't check SIPO's database. You also did not conduct an internet search. You didn't check social media, TikTok, Instagram. And so you missed that the existence of this company that does the same exact thing that you do. What that what that means is you are now in a situation where you've started using a name that you really love. You've spent a lot of money on branding and design. You've built a brand that customers love using this name. And now you may have to stop using the name. You may have to rebrand completely, and you may even have to pay legal costs because you didn't catch the name when you should have. So that's one very common mistake that small businesses, make. And we are hoping that with this presentation, we're able to help you to not make that mistake. Another common mistake that people make is choosing generic names. I see this a lot. And generic names means when someone chooses a name that directly describes what they sell. So, for instance, you want to register Best Event Rentals or Fresh Fish Markets. These are very hard or almost impossible to register as a trademark because trademark law protects distinctive brands, not common description. So, for instance, you cannot own sweet candy if you're selling just sweets or candies. You cannot own fresh fish market if all you are selling is fish. And it's just similar to wanting to trademark coffee shop or pizza restaurants or something of that nature. But you can trademark Apple for computers. You cannot trademark fresh apples for selling apples. So it's just it's very important to note that there's a range of protection that are given to trademarks, which ranges from coined marks to arbitrary marks to suggestive marks, descriptive marks, and generic marks. And I'm going to talk a bit more on what each of those marks look like. But what you should think of when you think about trademarks is that not all names are protected equally. And the more unique a name is, the stronger the protection it gets. So I'm going to start with coined marks. Coined marks are marks such as Kodak, Pepsi, Xerox, Exxon. They are words that on their own, they have no meaning whatsoever before the company created them. And these are very strong trademarks because they are 100% distinctive and no one else in the marketplace needs those words to be able to sell the products or offer the goods or services in the same industry. And so those are very easy to enforce and they enjoy a broader legal protection. On the second hand, we have arbitrary marks. Arbitrary marks are offered very strong protection as well because these are real words, but they are unrelated to the product that is associated with it. For example, we've used apple a lot. Apple is a fruit, but apple is being used to sell computers. So even though apple is a real word, it doesn't really depict computers. So it has it's an arbitrary mark, so it gets a stronger protection. Amazon is used for retail, but it's a word on its own that has its own distinct meaning, but it's not for retail. Shell is used for selling gas, but Shell Shell, there's a word that is a shell that we know as a shell, but that's not what they sell. And so these are very strong marks because they are distinctive and they are also difficult to copy by competitors. And then we now have suggestive marks. Suggestive marks are offered medium protection, which can become stronger the more you use the mark or the more the mark become associated with your brand or the products and services that you offer. These marks hint at what the product does, but do not directly describe it. And some very good examples are Netflix. Netflix is a combination of two words, net and flix, combined together. When you look at it, when you break it down, you kind of get an idea of what the product does. but you don't, it's not something that you see immediately. You see Netflix, you don't begin to think about the internet and movies. Pinterest is another good one. Pinterest, when you break it down, it's pin and interest combined together to make one word. And so these categories of marks require some imagination for you to connect them to the product or services that are being offered. And then we have descriptive marks. Descriptive marks are offered the weakest protection because these are marks that typically describe the product. They describe the product, the quality of the product, the location of the product, or the ingredients in the product. So, for example, Kingston cameras for a photography studio, a photography supply store. It's like descriptive of exactly what you're going to find in the store. I mean, it may seem like, oh, this is a good mark because it tells people what I do, but when it comes to trademarks, it might be a bit harder to register that mark because they also include words that competitors might need to be able to describe their own products and services too. So these marks can, however, still get registered after acquiring distinctiveness. So there's something called acquired distinctiveness. This is when you have used a mark for a long time, that it has become associated with your goods or your services within a geographic area. The trademarks registrar may ask you to submit some evidence to them that shows that the mark is distinctive enough, even though it is a descriptive mark. So yeah, it can still work, but it requires some planning, some strategy, and you cannot just assume that a descriptive mark will get approved. And then the last but not the least is generic terms. Those ones have no protection at all because they are usually common names of a product like grocery store, gym, or event rentals or fish markets. They're like very generic words, and those ones you would not get a trademark for because they will be objected to on the basis of being not descriptive enough or distinctive enough. Yeah, and so another mistake that small businesses make, which Ange has already touched on a bit earlier, is the misuse of trademarks. So when I say misuse, I mean things like you using your mark as a noun instead of what it should be, which is a brand name. So for instance, you say buy our Revlon hand cream, but instead of saying that, you say buy a Revlon. So everybody associates your hand cream with Revlon. So they go, I want a Revlon. And this is used in things like Kleenex or Google. When people want to use a tissue paper, they say, oh, can I have a Kleenex, please? Even when the manufacturer is not Kleenex. It's just associated with Kleenex. And Ange is going to talk a bit more about the illusion of a trademark. So I'm just adding this in here as one of the mistakes that people make when they are using trademarks. The other thing is inconsistent usage. So when you pick a mark, use the mark that you have picked across board consistently, because not doing so will water down your protection and affect you when you are trying to enforce your mark. So for instance, if you pick a trademark, like I used Giggles premium spices earlier. If you use that trademark, but then on your products you put Giggle spices, on your bags, your promotional items, you put Giggles or Giggles premium, it's not consistent across board. And it becomes an issue when for any reason you have to enforce your mark, or you are asked to prove that you've been using the mark by the registrar. And so the last but not the least mistake is not using the mark at all. And you might wonder, why would anybody register a mark that they are not using at all? Well, sometimes people do it because they are planning ahead, or they are trying to be defensive to make sure that this brilliant name that I have, I don't want someone else to get to it before I'm ready to launch my product. While that is noble and good, in Canada, if you register a trademark but you do not use it in association with the sale of goods and services for 3 years, another party that is interested in that name can apply to have your registration cancelled. And when this application is made, when this application is made, the registrar will reach out to you, the registered owner, and ask you to provide them with evidence of use. Now, if you've used the mark in the 3 years, you have things to show the registrar. But if you haven't used it at all, then you have nothing to show, right? You cannot rely on proposed use and say, oh, I was planning to use it, but you haven't used it in the last 3 years. And so what can happen in that case is that you may lose your trademark totally, or you may have the scope of your trademarks limited to the goods and services that the other party is not interested in. So if they are not interested in some goods and services, you can have that carved out, but that's really, really not a good thing to good place to be as a small business owner. And so, yeah, and those are some of the common mistakes. We just also added the that trademarks last for 10 to 15 years, depending on jurisdiction, and you can extend it with proof of continued use. And I think,
it's the wonderful thing about them is the ability to extend the protection as long as you're using it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I think you went through all of that. Yeah. Okay. So following this talk, here's a few questions that you might want to start thinking about. Should you go ahead with a trademark protection application, or should you just check to see if you're treading on somebody else's property? Definitely, I want you to do that without delay, and then think about whether it's the right time or whether you want to get to a particular level of income before you start this venture. If you want to do trademarking, we can talk about the cost. And I think the next slide is the two different ways of getting help in Kingston. One of them is Queen's Business Law Clinic, which is Tomi's the director of, and it's law students. You don't pay any labor, which is wonderful. However, it can take a little while to get in. They don't have a huge team, and there's lots of people who would love legal help for no cost. The other option is there's one registered trademark agent in Kingston, Robert Murata. He's at Cunningham Swan. He's a lawyer also, but he actually is a registered trademark agent. And so if you want to move quickly and you don't mind paying labor costs, then Rob would be an option. The other thing I want to mention is the Queen's Business Law Clinic is willing to help you with Canadian trademarks, but if you want US trademarks, they're not helping you. Whereas Robert can help you with Canada and US and others. He mostly works through associates, but at least you have one person to talk to about the whole portfolio of what you're going for. What does it cost? Tomi, you could probably say, but if you're just paying the government fee and no labor, you're going through the business law clinic, then I would say it's in the hundreds. I don't know.
I can just clarify that very quickly. So with the trademarks fees, there's a link I can share with everyone just so you can see what the cost is every year. But every year the fees are adjusted. Right now it costs $491.06 to register the first class of goods, and then for any additional class you pay $149.04. And most small businesses need one or two classes for their trademarks.
That's that niche class, that field of business that we've been talking about. Sometimes you want more than one associated with your mark, and so it costs extra to have more than one.
Yeah, and so at the QBLC, like Ange said, we are able to help provide some assistance with searching, because that's like the most time-consuming one for most lawyers or trademarks agents. We can do the searching, help you with figuring out if your name is available. We can provide you with the availability opinion to say, oh yeah, when we searched, here are things that we found that were similar to yours. And in some cases, when we find similar marks, we can also do a registrability opinion for you, which is basically letting you doing some research into the likelihood of your mark being successful. And so the limit of help that we can help you with is preparing the application and filing it before the registrar, the Canadian Trademarks Office. However, ongoing work like monitoring, responding to office actions, filing in the US Trademarks and Patent Office, we are unable to help. That's outside the scope of what we can do. But at least we can help with figuring out whether or not the mark is a viable one and help you with filing your registration in Canada. But Rob is also someone we refer people to all the time for trademarks work in Kingston. So it's a good person to connect with.
So I'm just going to repeat a little bit of that. If you go with the business law clinic, they help you to represent yourself. They prepare it. You file it. You receive the mail. You track the deadline for applying. And honestly, I work with undergrads a lot, and they could never handle the fact that 3 years from now, they have to receive mail. Otherwise, they're going to lose all rights because they're going to change their address 6 times. I think most of us on this call can handle receiving mail in a couple of years, but just a warning, you're the one representing the case. They are assisting you. Robert Murata costs more, probably 3K to 5K, depending on if you're going US, Canada only, more than one niece class. Let's say 3K-ish. 5K if you're getting his help for the US. And he represents you. He receives the mail. He tracks the deadline. He preps the response to the examiner, that kind of thing. So if you're the type of person who likes to just have the lawyer do it, yeah, these are the two different models. What's the risk? What's the risk of just waiting till you have enough money and it might be 4 or 5 years from now? The worry is that somebody else could build a mark that's very similar to yours and you wouldn't have legal teeth to go after them. What's the benefit? That's what we're here talking about today, is all of this branding and the consistency of the message to your clients.
And I just jump in before we move on.
Sure.
On the risks, like one of the other risks that we've already mentioned is that your trademark might be rejected if your name is too descriptive. So that's one risk. It also takes time. Trademark registration in Canada takes time. No matter how quickly you get it filed, it takes about 18 to 24 months to complete your trademark registration in Canada. Even though you can begin using TM immediately, but you can only use the R mark after you have registered. And the other risk is that someone may oppose your mark. After your approval stage, the trademarks database only shows you registered trademarks. It doesn't show you marks that are in the process of being registered. So marks that are currently being reviewed for registration. So you are unable to see if there's someone who has filed a trademark that is very similar to what you have planned to, but they would be able to see when your mark is approved and published in the journal. They will be able to see that there's a mark that has been published, and so they can object or oppose that mark at that time. And so usually the publication is there for like 2 months. So that's a risk. There's a risk that your mark you could get an opposition. And so I always tell people, like, if you haven't heard anything after 2 months since you got the mark published, then you can heave a sigh of relief and say, yes, I know I'm not going to get an opposition. And then you can also discover some conflicting names when you conduct the trademark search that you were unaware of before. But I think that's actually a benefit, because then you have the opportunity to either make your mark more distinctive before you file. And so that's not, I think it's actually a benefit, not a risk. But yeah, I just wanted to drop.
Yeah, that sounds like a reason to get advice, even if you're not ready to proceed yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, building your brand and getting advice on whether a trademark path is even viable in the future. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide. Tomi already mentioned it with Revlon. You just have to be a bit careful about how your term is used. For example, if I wanted my family member to buy facial tissues on the way home, I would just say buy Kleenex. I would not be meaning that I need the Kleenex brand. It has become a diluted mark. If I say, let's get in the jacuzzi, nobody cares what brand of hot tub it is, but I'm using this diluted term. And this is something you need to be aware of for the brand that you're going to develop, whether it's being used appropriately. Dilution is very difficult to combat once it starts. Anyway, I don't know if you've ever realized that jacuzzi is trying to smack down people who are using it inappropriately and reclaiming their brand so that it's only for their hot tubs. Queen's School of Business, I just put this on there to show you. Queen's had already built a mark and trademarked it in quite a few countries in the world as the one on the left with the gold crown. And then they have a good problem, which is that a very rich alumni guy gave them a bunch of money, but he wanted the school named after him. And there are already business schools in the world called Smith. So major problem for branding. They tried very hard to keep the brand so similar to what they had already built customer recognition for. You can see how similar they are. Yeah, I guess it's a big problem when somebody dumps millions of dollars on you. Okay, I'm not going to spend time here. You already know the 2 different routes to get help. We're going to talk a bit about copyright now. Okay. Copyright. It is protection of particular characters in a particular order. You can tell I'm from Quebec. I'm using my hands all the time. Okay. Let's say you developed a song or a poem or computer code, and the fact that those characters in that exact order, that's key to the whole thing. That's what you want legal teeth wrapped around. It can also be for a passage, for example, on your website. Let's say you're teaching how to use your device or whatever. You can say, this is copyrighted. This paragraph of text in these words in this order, that is what I want intellectual property associated with. Now, a lot of people think that copyright is the idea of the thing, but actually, I can lift the idea and say it in my own words, and you cannot come after me for copyright protection, like copyright infringement. It's not the idea of the story. It is those words in that order that cannot be lifted and pretend that it's from that second author's. So yeah, copyright's very specific to those words in that order. I do want you to put a copyright statement on your website. However, I hope you haven't borrowed stuff from other competitors' websites and it's not your original stuff because you couldn't put a copyright on that. So you have to be kind of very selective about what it is that you're saying is copyrighted. If it's, I don't know, some flow sheet that's from a textbook in your field of business and you've borrowed it, you'll have to put a little credit of where you got that from. Okay, how much text is needed for copyright? It can't be like a bumper sticker level of words like just do it for Nike. That they can trademark, but it's not copyrightable. It's too few a number of words. Here's a couple of warnings. If you wanted to, for example, let's say you had educational materials and you wanted to put at the bottom of every page, hey, you need my permission in order to copy this and present it as, if you were giving the same educational thing. You want to be credited. And so here's a couple of sort of sternly worded warnings that I borrowed from other people. What else we got? The advantages of copyright is you don't have to fill out a form and you don't have to pay money to the government. You can just put C with a circle around it, Angela Lyon, 2026. That's how easy it is. You are responsible to label it yourself. If you wanted to sue someone for copyright infringement, you would actually have to go through a process of filling out a piece of paper and notifying the government of, I claim this, I have copyright on it. I've had it since 2020, but I'm now registering it with the government because I need to start legal action. The government one doesn't give you more copyright. Like it's not a better one. It's just that it needs to be more official if you're going to actually start legal action. Okay, how long does copyright last? It lasts for ages, 75 years after the death of the last author. And so that's why you don't hear Beatles songs on all the commercials on TV, because there's still 2 Beatles to go on this earth, and 75 years after the death of the last one. That's when the songs will just become, you can play them anywhere, you don't have to pay or get permission. The copyright will expire. Okay. I think we talked about this. It has to be substantial. It can't be a bumper sticker level of words. It has to be your stuff. It has to be original. Okay, I haven't talked much about open source. If you're developing computer code, you might want to have a session with Tomi or me to talk about copyright for it. If you're using open source, which means sort of you put it on this website and you say, hey, I really want a tool for, I don't know, having my website flow easily. Can somebody please write code for me? And more than one person contributes to that. That can be a problem because your company wouldn't own the copyright to that work. The authors own the copyright for it. So yeah, if you're doing open source where a whole bunch of people are helping you with code, we need to talk about who owns that, the copyright for that code. Patents. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I know we're getting late in the hour. And so if you have an invention, I'd love to talk to you about patents, but I don't want to do it here. There's 2 different types. We mentioned utility. How does it work? Design. What is the shape? And I already mentioned the Coca-Cola bottle that we can all see in our heads. And we would do a search to see if that shape is actually new to the world. And is it worth protecting in? If somebody just makes a tiny little change to the shape of this cool vase, they're not going to owe you any money at all. So how much money do you want to invest in protecting that exact shape? How important is this? You do hear about this, like Samsung versus the Apple company are all in the courts about how things are looking and shaped, and the iPad and the devices. It's a world of intellectual property that's in the news all the time. Okay, utility, same thing. We're going to search to see if the idea is new. And then we're going to talk about where to patent. And you have to pay for each country. So you spend money very quickly with patenting. Same with trademarks. You have to file in each country. Okay, trade secrets. This isn't that applicable to most of you, I expect, because if you develop, I don't know, let's say you've got one fabulous face lotion. I could probably, as a chemist, take it to the lab and do some testing and figure out the exact ingredients. Pretty hard to keep that product secret. However, maybe the way that the lotion, the way that you make that emollient is really difficult to get it to be a smooth, homogeneous, consistent lotion. And the way that you do it, you lock it down. You keep it as a trade secret. You monitor who in your company gets to know that technique, and you keep it pretty secret. The problem with trade secrets is if you have a disgruntled employee who goes across town and works for your competitor, it's very difficult to get the secret back. You know, you don't have legal teeth wrapped around it. It's very hard to prove that they stole it. And so, yeah, there's disadvantages to trademarks, to trade secrets. If you can keep it secret, it can last a long time. Patents are only good for 20 years, but a trade secret can give you revenue for many, unlimited number of decades if you can keep the secret. One thing I like to warn people about is sometimes you don't know how the secret's going to leak. Let's say your face lotion has medical, uses, and so you actually license it to the hospital, but the hospital is vulnerable to a Freedom of Information Act request. And you had no idea that, licensing it to the hospital would make you potentially lose your secret. So anyway, you have to be kind of paranoid if you're relying on trade secrets about who knows, and keep it on a need to know, lock it down. Okay, Tomi, you're going to talk about enforcing.
Yeah, so we've talked about how to, get the mark, how to get the name, choose the name, register the name, and now we are talking about when you have the name, how do you protect it from, being misused or infringed upon by third parties? I think the first thing would be being sure that you have a system in place to monitor the use of your trademark. And that's where trademarks agents and law firms come in really handy, because they have a system of monitoring registered trademarks that they are retained to, handle. So the first thing will be monitoring the mark, because how would you know if someone else is using your mark if you are not going out there to search? It involves things like reviewing the trademarks journal when it's published, and that takes time. And for many small business owners, they just don't have the time for that. So at that stage, it might be necessary to find a trademarks agent to do that for you. But when you finally find someone is infringing on your rights, what are the options that you have? Well, the first option could be to ignore. And I know you might think, why would I ignore the use of my name? Well, it depends on how the mark was used. If the use is for a non-commercial purpose, such as a fan who posts something about your product, or someone giving a review of your product on their Instagram page or social media, things like that, it's really not affecting your brand, your name. They're not using your name to make profit out of it. So you don't need to enforce that. If there's no likelihood of customer confusion in the name, like the Popeyes example I used, where there's a Popeyes chicken and there's a Popeyes supplement company. There's no way consumers are going to be confused or think both are related. In that kind of situation, you can ignore it. So that's different industries, different geography. So, for instance, your business is located in Canada only, but you find a company but you find a company in Netherlands or Germany or somewhere where there's no way you're ever going to sell your products there. You have no business going there, or China, something like that. You could ignore it. And if it's a really small scale business that doesn't really have any effect on your sales or how people view your products, you might want to just ignore it and just keep your eye on it and see if it gets bigger, then I will do something about it. But for now, I don't need to do anything about it. Now, if you then choose to do something about it, the next step would be to send a cease and desist letter to the person. And you send a cease and desist letter when someone is selling using a similar name or logo or design or something related to your products and services. You also send one where there's a likelihood of where the likelihood of customer confusion is high. So where it's likely that your brand reputation may be harmed. So you can see that the product that you're selling using your name is substandard. It's not the standard that you want your brand to be represented as. And you know that there's a likelihood that a person who buys A and buys B would think A and B are related. And you don't want people coming to say, oh, I bought this product and this product was crap, when you know that product was not yours. It was for another person who is copying your name or using your name for their product. In that case, then you may want to send them a cease and desist letter. Where you also want a record of enforcement, that you have taken the steps that you're supposed to take before you can file a trademarks infringement action in court. You need to have shown that you warned them, you told them to stop using the name, you gave them a period of time to stop, and none of it was explored. And in that case, you send them a cease and desist letter. And then I would recommend hiring a lawyer before you send the cease and desist letter, just so that you have proper legal advice. But then at some point, when you need to get a lawyer when you can see that significant revenue is at risk. You can see that it's affecting your sales. You're getting negative customer reviews on Instagram for a product that you were not the one that manufactured. You've tried negotiation with the other party, and they're still producing products and selling them despite your cease and desist notice. And in cases where there's cross-border or online marketplace disputes, a lot of people sell across borders these days. You sell across Canada, US, Mexico, Europe, and all of that. So for cross-border online marketplace dispute, you definitely need to get a lawyer. And where you have any issues with your trademarks registration, like I was saying earlier, sometimes you get office actions from the trademarks registrar questioning your application. In those cases, you need to get a trademarks agent or a lawyer in those cases, because just to clarify, only a trademarks agent can represent you in front of the trademarks office in Canada. A trademarks lawyer, which I am, cannot. I am not a trademarks agent. I'm a lawyer practicing in the area of trademarks law. So in those cases, you would need to get a trademarks agent to help you with those types of issues. So yeah, so those are, I think, the steps that you need to take if you have to enforce your rights. And I'm going to hand over to Angie. I'm just wondering, should we take questions or should we
Yeah,
do?
I think we should open it up. We have some questions to keep the conversation going, but is it okay if I take the share off,
Yeah,
Carrie,
sure,
for a few
sure.
minutes?
Yeah.
And we'll use, I have them
Yeah.
printed if I need to introduce a question from the frequently asked questions sheet.
Yeah.
Who would like to
So
chat?
I'm actually going to go through the ones, so I'll guide it. If anybody has additional questions or specific hypothetical, any of that, you need to contact Ange and Tommy. So maybe Tommy, if you could put your email in the however you want to be contacted. So I'm just going to be focusing on the ones that have already been asked because that will take us at least to the end of where we're going. So let me go right up to the beginning. Here we go. Okay, Amy had a great situation. She's interested in what you have to share about other regions like trademarking, since she's had people in the UK and US copy her brand and name. So in that situation, I'm sure others have seen that. What happens?
Mm.
Okay, I'll start, and please feel free to jump in at any time. So to be able to prosecute an action in the UK or somewhere else where someone is using your mark, you need to show that every country has different regulatory authorities that are in charge of their marks. So in Canada, it's the SIPO. In the UK, they have their own, and so the laws that apply would also be different. Um, unless you have a registration in that country, your rights might be no, unless you have a registration in that country and you sell to customers in that country, your rights might be a bit affected because you're not present in that country commercially. You don't have a commercial presence. I think we mentioned earlier, trademarks are limited to the country in which you registered, which is why if you have a Canadian trademarks registration but you do not register in the US, your rights there are limited. You can, I mean, depending on how well known your product is in the United States or the number of customers that you have sold to, you may have some common law rights to pursue passing off or things like that in the United States, but you wouldn't have a registration certificate to pursue them and say, I have a registered trademark. You are breaching my rights by using the same mark here in the United States or in the United Kingdom. So that's where the benefit of registering in all the countries where you are planning to sell or where you have customers comes in. So if you're going to sell in the United States or in the UK, it's very advisable that you register that mark in those countries.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
All right, Amy, we'll let you follow up for more information. A couple of folks had a question about what if it's, for instance, a logo is co-designed. Um, who owns it, I guess, and if one person ends it. Anyways, I don't have all the details and we don't have to do that here, but just generally, maybe we can address it.
Okay, I can also try. So that's where you need a very strong agreement, contract between you and the co-designers of the logo. So you need to have either an agreement, or if it's an employment, if you employ them to do it for you, then your employment contract has to have a strong intellectual property clause that shows who owns what. If it's an independent contractor relationship, you need to have an agreement as well that sets out who has what, who owns which right. And in the event that you did not have that before it was created, then you need to get an assignment from them. You need to get them to assign their interest in the logo or the design. And in that way, you create an agreement where the parties agree that for XYZ, maybe, I don't know, a monetary amount or whatever you decide to exchange between themselves, I'm giving you all the rights to use this design, this logo, and I'm not going to have a claim to it going forward. So that's where agreements come in.
Yeah, I'm hearing put it in writing.
Yes, put it in
Yeah, and
writing.
if you don't have it in writing, you're at risk.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want the company
Okay.
to own the work product, you don't want the work product ownership to stay on the shoulders of the individual who created it. You want
Mm,
some kind of employment agreement or consulting agreement, something on paper that says the work product will be transferred so that the ownership lies in the company.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and if that person has further questions, you can follow up. Tanya asked a very common question, I think that people are wondering. She says, if I'm working virtually from Canada, but with clients all over the world, do I need to be aware of the registrations in all countries, trademark registrations, or just the countries where my clients are?
Hmm. Are you
Hmm.
selling product, Tanya, where you're actually shipping something with your logo into a variety of countries? Or are you just talking about the branding of them consulting you and virtually your website and stuff is being accessed?
Yeah, I'm a service provider. There's no products.
Okay,
And
that helps.
so, yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to step on anyone else's toes, but
Yeah.
mm,
I, if I were you, I would want to do some searching to see how busy your brand name, I don't know what it is. Let's say it's flamingo. How busy is the word flamingo in those countries where you're getting work? And does somebody actually have a legal teeth to come after you for using that word? I would want to be aware. And the other thing is not just who's using it, but does somebody have a history of that word where they defrauded all their clients and they're in the press? And so in the Netherlands, the word flamingo, everyone thinks, oh, those guys are crooks. That's the kind of thing where you want to know the history of the branding
So
that
good.
you are developing in all the regions that you're using it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Hope that's helpful. Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
And I was just going to add that, you don't need to have to look everywhere, just where you have clients, like where your clients come from. Because looking all over the world might be too much for you. But wherever you have clients, it should be where you should focus on checking all of what Ange has just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked about product is you may actually have to have stickers that you put over and cover your logo when you ship to the UK, for example, because somebody else has a trademark on that logo, something really similar. And you only have a few clients there. And so you don't want to develop new packaging. You just want to cover it and ship it, I don't know, with just your name, a company name instead of that logo you've developed.
Interesting. Okay, moving on to the next question. Amy's asking if you've built up brand recognition using your URL, social handles, have logos, a trademark, and other copyright out there for a length of time, and others come after and copy but try to dispute it. Is the length of time of your operation or activity taken into account? You might have already answered that.
Tomi, do you want to take that one?
Yes.
I'm interested to know about common rights when you don't have a trademark on it, but you've been using it.
Yes, so that's where the common law rights come in, because the common law rights protects trademarks even though they have not been registered. You can bring an action of passing off against another party who uses a mark that does not belong to them. So even though you don't have the certificate, so it's more expensive, it's maybe harder to prove because passing off can be quite restrictive to just the areas in which your mark is known, which is the advantage of trademarking your mark, because that gives you Canada-wide protection. So it's you do have legal rights to pursue them and to enforce against them. Is it easy? No. And is it expensive? Yes, because you then have to hire a lawyer to go file all these documents, and but depending on the damage that you're suffering as a brand, it might
Yeah.
just be worth it. It might just be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
the
good
length of
point.
time, yeah, the length of time definitely counts. It counts that you have been
Yeah.
in use for a while.
And when you have your corporate hat on as president of your company, I want you to build your records of like it was 2024 that we launched the website. That was the first time
Good.
I
That's
used the
good.
logo.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, maybe I'm showing my age. You don't have to print it out, but I almost want you to print it out and show this was website version 1 that launched on this date. Stick it in an envelope, seal it, and put it in your corporate record filing cabinet. You can also
Yep.
do this with electronic records. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it has to be paper, but I am saying keep a version 1 with the date that it launched. That is company history that you need to track.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, Tanny has another great question about AI. With so many people using AI to write content, I'm wondering how copyright could apply or be challenged.
Mm. The other
Juicy
thing about
one.
AI that's really exciting in my field is if AI generates an invention, the current laws say that you have to list human names in order to patent it. And so there's all these legal fights going on right now.
Wow.
For
Yeah.
copyright with AI, it's interesting. If you're developing original content, man, you don't want AI, diving in and learning and taking all your stuff and barfing it out on every search that other people use about that topic. I don't know if I have a lot of advice about this. Tommy, do you have anything?
Well, we are in for a wild ride in intellectual property with the use of AI, because I think there are going to be a lot of interesting cases coming up and challenges as well. Just like I said, there's really not much yet out there on what the law would state or take, what the position of the law would be when it comes to the use of AI in developing inventions, material songs. I see a lot of videos of songs that were made by AI, and the dance steps. And I think recently I read an article about Hollywood being up in arms because someone created a whole movie using
Right.
AI. And I'm like, they're going to be out of jobs soon. And so it's definitely going to be an interesting period for intellectual property. And I think the law would evolve a lot as well
Yeah.
to meet up with all these new demands. As of right now, honestly, I don't know how the law would treat AI generated work. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the interweb came out, the information superhighway, we used to call it, and how that threw the legal, world into a tizzy. And we thought this will never be managed. And I'm not sure it's completely managed even now. So I
Mhm.
think that, this is certainly a new era and a new chapter for this. So to be determined, but common sense and wisdom, like we're hearing today, has been really valuable. I think a last question for you, unless there's another one that pops up in the chat. Could you reiterate again, the trademark I heard you say lasts for 10 years. Do you have to pay every year to maintain it? Like, what's the cost, the ongoing cost of having a trademark? Like, is it once you pay it, and I wrote down what the costs you said were about 491. Uh, you know, how long does it last? Do you have to pay every year?
Yeah, you don't have to pay every year.
Good.
In fact, it's kind of too bad that you don't have to pay every year because unfortunately, I have to say to my trademark clients, you need to write down this deadline. In 10 years, you have a fee due. And
Mm,
who knows what address you'll be at that point? You may not get the reminder. I might not be working anymore. I might be retired. We all need to track this deadline. Yeah, I almost dislike it that you don't have a fee every year. But
yeah.
yeah, they don't do annual fees for trademarks.
Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, there's no annual fee, but to your point, and there's one way that you can keep track of your trademark even when you change address. Because the trademarks office, they try to send notices out, but like you said, people move a lot. And so I think it will be helpful for people, especially when you have a trademark, to have a reminder in your calendar, maybe every year, to go onto the Canadian trademarks database and search
Good
your
point.
trademarks out. Yeah, because if you do search your trademarks, you would
Mm,
find a section that has documents where any notice that has been sent out by the office will be found there. So
that's
that's
nice.
one way to keep track of,
Yeah.
Good
So
point.
annually, you have to get on the
Yeah.
website and see if there's any notices for you.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
You
an
have to be
interesting tip.
proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always
Just one
worry
more
that
thing to add to your to-do list, small business owners.
I just worry my calendar software will have to change,
It's
but
true.
yeah, doing that annually, that is a good tip.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I want to thank Ange and Tommy. You have blown our minds. And also just the way that you've gone about presenting today has been so common sense and has so been so helpful. And I know that many people will watch this video and recording later on. I had dropped into the Zoom chat the fact that this will be on our YouTube channel for Queen's Partnerships and Innovation later today. So keep your eyes on it. I think let's just, be wise in the way that we're naming. And you have me as a contact. If anybody wants to connect with either Ange or the Queen's Business Law Clinic, you can do that through me, or you can use email addresses that they've provided. So thank you on behalf of all of us. Ange and Toby, truly appreciate your time today. And for the women on the call, go out there, own your property, and have a great time making money doing it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
Carrie.
Bye now. See you later.